The washroom was unkept and it was such a bad situation to witness. There were some tissue papers that were hanging around that were lit, that were disposed of anyhow, and I'm sure it was from the previous flight the aircraft had, and those in charge didn't take the time to clean the washroom before they got us on board the aircraft. Even the tap wasn't, and there was no running water from the tap that was in the washroom, and it was such a sad situation. I think Rwand Air can up their game. Hello guys, so welcome to this video today. My name is Yaobin. So follow me on this trip as I share my experience traveling on the Rwand Air KO 400 from Rwanda, Kigali to Nairobi. So this trip was in 2 legs. I departed from Accra, Ghana and transited in Kigali on the Boeing 737. Now I'm taking a smaller aircraft, a relatively smaller aircraft, which is a Bombardier KO 400 from Kigali to Nairobi. Come along, let me share my experience on this trip with you guys. So disembarking from the previous aircraft I was on, which came from Accra to Kigali, we went through immigration checks, all the necessary formalities, and then we were seated at a certain area waiting for our aircraft. And immediately we were called. We went through the gate and then we had to get onto the bus, which transported us to our aircraft, and then it was now time for boarding. So there it was, the Rwand Air Bombardier KO 400 next gen, packed under the night sky in its full glory. So it was now time for us to get on board, and here today needed to go through some checks and formalities before we got on board the aircraft. So here on board, it was now time for me to locate my seats and get seated. So after locating my seats, I sat patiently while other passengers were trying to get on board the aircraft. So there's no in-flight entertainment system on this aircraft. So while we waited for other passengers to get on board, I needed to keep myself busy. So I took out the safety instruction guide from the back of the seat ahead to go through and then see what was inside. Although this Bombardier jet is a pretty old plane, the leg room on it was pretty much decent. So the aircraft didn't really get full. It was half the capacity and then half of it was also empty. No long after, a couple of passengers also joined. We taxied for the runway and it was now time for takeoff. So once we were airborne, the views from above of the city of Kigali was just amazing. The light, the streets, it was just priceless. Just look at that. Just look at this. Isn't it beautiful? So as I mentioned earlier, the aircraft was literally empty. The people on board were just a handful. It was just a few people on board. So when the aircraft reached its cruising altitude, I took a tour on the aircraft. I went to the washroom, and it wasn't such a pleasant scene at all. The washroom was unkept. I'm sure it was from the previous flight. They didn't clean it. The air hostess didn't do a good job, or whoever is supposed to do the cleaning didn't do any cleaning. And we got on board, and there were some tissue papers hanging up somewhere. Even water from the sink. There was no water from the sink. There was no water coming. There was no water running from the tap, and it was such a sad situation.
Passenger supporting.
No water. I think Rwanda Air can do better, because on the previous aircraft I was on, Accra to Kigali, it was such a perfect situation. The washroom was clean. There was running water from the tap. But I don't know why it is different in this case for the Bombardier KO 400. So I think they can do better. Soon after I left the washroom, we started our descent into Nairobi, Kenya. And yes, officially we were now in Kenya. We had touched down. So welcome to Nairobi. Thank you. So when we got down from the aircraft, a bus came to pick us up from the tarmac and then took us to the terminal building for us to go through immigration checks and all that. So we sat down in Kenya around 4:30 a.m. in the morning. These Kenyans in front of us were having a good time. They were having a time of their life. It looks like they were returning from a competition for their country. So we went through passport control. I had to pick up my bag from the carousel, and it was now time to officially enter into Kenya for my first time. So after the checks and everything were done in the terminal building, we stepped out and there was a sign that was saying, "Welcome to Magical Kenya." And I'm sure Kenya has some magic to offer us. Trust me, I'm more than ready to experience this Kenyan magic. So after we got out, I got to the ATM, withdrew some cash, some Kenyan shillings. We got a cab. One thing I find very interesting and fascinating about Kenya, on the Jomo Kenyatta airport, is that right next to the airport, you see the park on the left side. That is the Kenyan National Park. And in whose wildest imagination would you think a national park that has lions, giraffe, tigers will be located next to an international airport? That's crazy. That's so adventurous. Like, when I got to Kenya and I heard about it and I saw it with my eyes, I was like, what? I need to visit this park. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed yet, because I have a lot of Kenyan related videos coming up in the weeks ahead, and I am sure you don't want to miss that.